Jared Kushner, son-in-law of U.S. President Donald Trump and former senior White House advisor, is known for his central role in the Trump administration, particularly in Middle East issues and peace policies. However, beyond his political career, Kushner has been the focus of various conspiracy theories and eschatological debates within Christian circles. Some groups speculate whether he could be the Antichrist mentioned in the Bible, a world leader who would emerge in the end times. This documentary explores this controversial question: is Jared Kushner the Antichrist? Will he reveal himself by the 2030 agenda? The concept of an Antichrist originates from biblical prophecies, particularly the book of Revelation and the apostolic letters, referring to a future deceptive ruler who will bring false peace to the world before causing great tribulation. Throughout history, various powerful figures have been labeled as potential antichrists, from ancient emperors to modern leaders. For example, many pointed to Roman Emperor Nero, conqueror Napoleon Bonaparte, or dictator Adolf Hitler as possible antichrists due to similarities between their regimes and prophesied characteristics. But none of these claims have proven true. Now, with the advancement of the 21st century, new global factors have fueled eschatological speculations. Prolonged wars, surveillance technology advancements, historic Middle East peace agreements, and even political movements like the UN's 2030 agenda have become part of the scenario many associate with the last days. In this context, Jared Kushner emerges as a recurring name in end-times theories. His direct involvement in negotiating Middle East peace agreements, his background and influence in international politics, and even curious details about his personal life are cited as possible signs by those who believe in this theory. But how well-founded are these claims? Are there concrete pieces of evidence? Or is it all a product of speculative interpretations of Scripture and intriguing coincidences? In this video, we will dissect the arguments and facts used by those who argue that Jared Kushner could be the Antichrist. We will analyze relevant biblical prophecies, comparing them with events in Kushner's career and recent global developments. We will also discuss the 2030 agenda and why some believe that by that year, the son of perdition, as the Antichrist is called in some biblical translations, may openly reveal himself to the world. Prepare for a journey that blends facts, religious beliefs, and conspiracy theories, seeking to separate what might be reality from sensationalist speculation. Now let's summarize the main characteristics attributed to the Antichrist by the Holy Scriptures, so we can later compare them to Jared Kushner. Several Bible passages, particularly in the books of Daniel, 2 Thessalonians, and Revelation, outline a profile of this future world leader. Here are some key points drawn from these prophecies. Rise to global power. The Antichrist would emerge as an influential leader on a global scale, receiving authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Revelation 13:7. He will consolidate political power, possibly unifying governments or forming a coalition of nations under his command. False peacemaker. Initially, he will be seen as a hero of peace. The book of Daniel suggests that this leader will establish a significant peace agreement for a period of 1 week, commonly interpreted as 7 years, bringing relief to a long-standing conflict. Daniel 9:27. Through this diplomacy, he will destroy many who are at ease. Daniel 8:25, meaning he will conquer kingdoms without open war, through cunning and promises of peace. Breaking the covenant and persecution. In the middle of the peace period, after about 3.5 years, he will break his own covenant. According to Daniel and Revelation, this will usher in a great tribulation. He will brutally persecute those who do not submit to him, with power to wage war against the saints and to conquer them. Revelation 13:7. This will be an unprecedented period of tyranny, marked by wars and religious oppression, cult of personality and blasphemy. The prophecies also indicate that the Antichrist will exalt himself above all gods and profane faith. He opposes and exalts himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Even sitting in the temple of God and proclaiming himself to be God, he will speak boastful words and blasphemies. Revelation 13:5, and demand exclusive devotion, likely presenting himself as humanity's savior. Deceptive signs and wonders. To convince the masses, this leader will have the power to perform impressive signs. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works, with all power and signs and false wonders. 2 Thessalonians 2:9. Revelation 13 describes deceptive miracles in service of the Antichrist to make humanity follow him blindly, including something like an image that speaks and causes those who do not worship it to be killed. Mark of the Beast, 666. One of the most famous elements is that under the Antichrist's rule, a total economic control system will be implemented. Everyone will need to bear a mark on their right hand or forehead with the name or number of the beast to buy or sell. Revelation 13:16-18. The biblical text states that this number is 666, known as the number of the beast. This detail about 666 has been the subject of much speculation and fear among Christians, as it would indicate a connection between the Antichrist and this numerical code. Lack of regard for the desire of women. An intriguing passage in Daniel 11:37 states that this king will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the desire of women. One line of interpretation understands this to mean that the Antichrist will have no regard for women. Curiously, some scholars suggest that the phrase desire of women refers to the longing of Hebrew women to bear the promised Messiah, meaning the Antichrist will despise the true Messiah and the faith of these women. This could imply celibacy, misogyny, or a lack of romantic affection. In summary, the scriptures portray the Antichrist as a charismatic leader who will rise as a crisis solver, uniting the world under a false peace, but soon becoming a cruel dictator, persecuting the faithful and establishing a regime of absolute control, political, economic, and religious. Throughout history, believers have vigilantly watched events awaiting these signs. In the next segment, we will begin analyzing Jared Kushner in light of these prophetic criteria, seeking relevant correspondences or coincidences. Does Kushner unsettlingly meet some of these requirements? Let's find out. Since the early days of Christianity, nearly every era of turmoil has sparked suspicions about who might be the Antichrist. Believers, seeing powerful figures emerge and cause great upheaval, often associated them with apocalyptic prophecies. For example, in the 1st century, some interpreted the Roman Emperor Nero, a notorious persecutor of Christians, as the beast of Revelation. In fact, there's even a gematria calculation of Nero Caesar that results in 666, the number of the beast. During the Middle Ages and Renaissance, it was common for religious adversaries to label each other as the Antichrist. The reformer Martin Luther was convinced that the Pope of his time was the Antichrist. Moving into the modern era, we have notable examples. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Napoleon Bonaparte was feared by many as a possible Antichrist during his wars of conquest in Europe. In 1709, a pamphlet even demonstrated that Napoleon fulfilled all the prophecies, and they found the number 666 hidden in his name. Later, in the 1930s and 1940s, many religious leaders believed Adolf Hitler was the Antichrist, given the global scale of destruction he caused and his persecution of Jews. Similarly, other tyrants and influential personalities, from dictators to international political figures, have been pointed to over the years as the imminent Antichrist. The fact is, so far, all these identifications have proven premature or incorrect. History has moved forward, and none of these candidates fully fulfilled the final events described in Scripture. Yet with each generation, new names arise as world conditions seem to align with prophetic aspects. Today it's no different. Various contemporary figures are the subject of speculation. Some of the usual suspects mentioned in prophecy discussions include leaders like Vladimir Putin, Russia, European royalty like Prince William, and even religious leaders like the Pope. In the United States, it's common to see prominent politicians in the discussion, such as former President Barack Obama, current President Donald Trump, and also Jared Kushner, often noted for his role in Middle East peace agreements. Knowing that Jared Kushner is just the latest in a long list of names flagged as a possible Antichrist doesn't automatically dismiss the suspicions, but offers a caution. Discernment is needed, as many experts advise. So far, everyone has been wrong. We should set speculations aside and focus on what the Bible actually says about the Antichrist. Often, historical events have been interpreted as the end times without actually being so. However, the coincidences and parallels are intriguing enough to keep investigating. Now we'll focus specifically on Jared Kushner, who he is, what he's done so far, and why so many point to him when the topic is the Antichrist and the 2030 agenda. Let's dive into the detailed analysis. After contextualizing the prophecies, we turn our attention to Jared Kushner himself. So who is this figure, some suspect of playing such a sinister prophetic role? Jared Corey Kushner was born in January 1981 in New Jersey, USA, to an affluent Orthodox Jewish family. His paternal grandparents, Joseph and Rachel Kushner, were Holocaust survivors who immigrated to the United States in 1949. Jared's father, Charles Kushner, became a real estate magnate in New York, and Jared grew up in this privileged environment. He graduated in sociology from Harvard University and later completed a dual degree, law and MBA, at New York University. In 2009, Jared married Ivanka Trump, daughter of then-billionaire Donald Trump, and Ivanka converted to Orthodox Judaism, aligning with her husband's faith. In business, Kushner took over the family enterprises early on. At 25, he bought the New York Observer newspaper, and after 2008, he began leading Kushner Companies, the real estate firm founded by his father. Under his management, the company made high-profile investments, including the 2007 acquisition of a skyscraper on Fifth Avenue, Manhattan, a detail we'll explore further. Jared Kushner also shifted from the Democratic political spectrum to the Republican one in the 2010s as his family's interests and closeness to Donald Trump grew. He was deeply involved in Trump's 2016 presidential campaign, serving as a strategic advisor behind the scenes. With Trump's victory and inauguration in 2017, Kushner joined the White House as a senior advisor, a high-ranking position he held throughout the administration, 2017 to 2021. Despite controversies over nepotism, Jared quickly took on significant responsibilities in the Trump administration. His contributions included drafting prison reform proposals, which led to the First Step Act of 2018, and coordinating economic and innovation initiatives in the country. However, undoubtedly, Kushner's most prominent role was in Middle East foreign policy. He was the main interlocutor for the U.S. government in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, serving as the architect of the peace plan known as the Deal of the Century, presented in 2020. Although this plan was not implemented, Jared continued negotiating directly with moderate Arab countries, culminating in the signing of the Abraham Accords in September 2020. These accords established historic normalization of relations between Israel and several Arab neighbors, such as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, and later Sudan and Morocco, the first such treaties since 1994. Kushner was also influential in the U.S. decision to move its embassy to Jerusalem in 2018, reinforcing American recognition of the city as Israel's capital. In Israel, he came to be seen as a valuable ally. In December 2020, for example, the chief rabbi of the Western Wall held a ceremony to honor him, thanking the Jewish son-in-law of the president for his services to the State of Israel. After leaving the White House in January 2021, Kushner founded an investment firm called Affinity Partners, through which he maintained close ties with Middle Eastern leaders, notably Saudi Arabia. He also published a memoir in 2022, Breaking History, detailing behind-the-scenes accounts of his role in the Trump administration. Today, at 44 years old, Jared Kushner remains an influential figure behind the scenes, though he has stayed out of the direct political spotlight. Curiously, his low-key profile contrasts with the magnitude of his diplomatic achievements. This unique trajectory, an Orthodox Jew, heir to a real estate empire, president's son-in-law, and Middle East peace negotiator, is what makes Kushner such an intriguing and controversial focus for conspiracy theorists and prophecy analysts. It's not hard to understand why Kushner sparks so many theories. He is Jewish, a significant factor for messianic expectations in Israel, achieved a historic Middle East peace agreement, potentially fulfilling the role of a false peacemaker, has deep connections with world leaders, and even has curious elements like a building numbered 666 in his business portfolio. Next, we will dissect these points in detail and with greater depth, relating Jared Kushner's figure to the prophetic signs that raise suspicions about him. Let's dive in. One of the pillars of speculation around Jared Kushner is his direct involvement in Middle East peace agreements. The Bible in Daniel 9:27 predicts that a leader will make a covenant with many for a period of 7 years. Many interpret this as a comprehensive peace treaty involving Israel and several nations. This act would initiate the final 7 years, the tribulation, with an apparent peace that would be broken by the Antichrist halfway through the period. As we've seen, Kushner was the architect of the Abraham Accords in 2020, which normalized relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, later joined by Sudan and Morocco. The very name Abraham Accords is highly symbolic, alluding to the patriarch revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims, an appeal to unity among the Abrahamic faiths. Not surprisingly, in the imagination of some theorists, Kushner's accord was met with enthusiasm. Even President Trump called it a historic peace agreement and began to be considered, could it be the fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy? Christian leaders and scholars mostly say not yet. While notable, the 2020 accord does not directly involve Palestine nor establish a defined 7-year period. Thus, it doesn't meet all the requirements of the covenant with many described in Daniel. Key details are missing. There's no set 7-year duration, only a few countries are involved, not a broad group of many, and no arrangement regarding the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem was included. However, many acknowledge that these accords could be a precursor to the prophesied scenario. For instance, it's speculated that in the near future, a world leader could confirm or strengthen the Abraham Accords, or a treaty derived from them, perhaps including the Jerusalem and temple issue, and thus finally establish the 7-year covenant. Some even suppose that if Saudi Arabia or other influential countries join the treaties, and if Jews are granted the right to rebuild the third temple in Jerusalem, many will see the prophecy unfolding before their eyes. This leader would be celebrated as the greatest peacemaker of all time before revealing his true face. It's worth noting that, in addition to multilateral regional agreements, Kushner also presented a detailed bilateral peace plan. In January 2020, the White House unveiled the Peace to Prosperity proposal, nicknamed the Deal of the Century, envisioning a Palestinian state provided it accepted conditions like a capital in Abu Dis, a Jerusalem suburb instead of East Jerusalem, and limitations on its sovereignty. The plan was rejected by Palestinian leadership and several countries, failing to be implemented. Still, the mere fact that Kushner sought to mediate such a comprehensive agreement reinforces his image's connection to the possible peacemaker of the end times. Even biblical analysts who don't see the Abraham Accords as a literal fulfillment of prophecy admit that they offer a glimpse of what's to come in terms of nation alignment and peace-seeking. For those suspicious of Kushner, he has already demonstrated the ability to broker a broad peace agreement, a concerning credential when viewed through the lens of prophecy. The continuation or expansion of these accords in the coming years is something conspiracy theorists will closely monitor, watching whether Kushner or a successor backed by him could take them to the next level of a unique global covenant. Some contemporary religious leaders express great anticipation. Pastor J.D. Farag, a prophecy expert, recently stated that we're just a mosquito's whisker away from the start of the end times, emphasizing how close we are to these changes. With this urgency in mind, observers will continue to closely monitor developments in any peace agreement involving Israel and Jared Kushner's involvement in them as possible precursors to the literal fulfillment of biblical prophecies. It's worth noting that, officially, Israel and Arab countries consider the Abraham Accords a realistic geopolitical advance, not a mystical event. However, our analysis focuses on the perspective of those who see prophetic significance behind these accords. Another piece of the prophetic puzzle is Jared Kushner's Jewish heritage and his acceptance in Israel. For a leader to be embraced as the Messiah by Jews, it's expected, according to many Christian interpretations, that he would be Jewish or at least a great benefactor of Israel. Kushner fits this criterion. He is an Orthodox Jew, a descendant of Holocaust survivors, and a declared Zionist. His involvement in the U.S. Embassy moved to Jerusalem, and peace agreements earned him honors in the Jewish state itself. For example, in 2020, he received a tribute from the chief rabbi of the Western Wall for his services to the state of Israel. More intriguing for theorists is the question of Davidic lineage. Biblical tradition states that the Messiah of Israel would be a descendant of King David. Thus, it's speculated that the Antichrist, posing as the Messiah, might claim such lineage. Rumors have surfaced in conspiracy forums that Jared Kushner may have direct ancestry from the House of David. Even the detail of his initials, J.C. Jared Corey, coinciding with Jesus Christ, is cited by some as a curious sign, though this alone proves nothing. While there's no concrete genealogical evidence for this, the mere idea adds fuel to the theory. Here, curious historical analogies are drawn. It's noted that in the 8th century, Emperor Charlemagne sought a prince of the House of David to marry his daughter, linking his empire to the messianic lineage. Similarly, albeit coincidentally, Donald Trump gave his daughter Ivanka in marriage to a modern Jewish prince, Jared Kushner, cementing a symbolic alliance between his clan and the people of Israel. Naturally, verifying claims of Davidic lineage today is difficult. However, in the prophetic realm, perception and acceptance matter. Kushner, as a Jew and son-in-law of a president who made historic gestures toward Israel, enjoys immense prestige among many Israelis, a crucial factor for him to one day be seen as a savior in a crisis context. His name is rarely associated with anti-Semitism controversies. On the contrary, he was seen as a representative of Jews in the U.S. government's upper echelons. Moreover, Kushner and his wife are close to the Chabad Lubavitch community, a branch of Hasidic Orthodox Judaism, known for its strong messianic appeal. This means Jared moves comfortably in religious circles that most eagerly await the imminent arrival of a Messiah, mingling with rabbis who would likely view him favorably if he promoted the construction of the Third Temple or other causes significant to the Jewish faith. All this paints a picture of a man who, if he wished, could be warmly received in Jerusalem as a Mashiach, Messiah, at least initially, before any disappointments. Curiously, there's a theological debate about the Antichrist's ethnic origin. Some point to Daniel 9:26 to suggest he will come from the people who destroyed Jerusalem, i.e., the ancient Roman Empire, meaning he would be a Western Gentile leader. Others emphasize that Jews would never accept a non-Jewish Messiah, so the Antichrist would need to have Jacob's blood. In Kushner's case, he intriguingly straddles both worlds. He is Jewish by birth, but also a man of the West, tied to the hegemonic power, the United States, and influential in international forums, meeting both the Roman and Jewish expectations in the eyes of conspiracy theories. In summary, in the chessboard of prophecies, the religious piece fits. Jared Kushner carries the heritage and Jewish identity that an Antichrist would need to deceive many in Israel. The question remains, is this mere coincidence or part of a deliberate script for the end times? Either way, his identity notably fulfills the requirement of a false Messiah who could deceive the nation of Israel. Only time will tell. The 666 building, coincidence or mark of the beast? It's a 41-story skyscraper, opened in 1957, that proudly displayed the controversial number at its top from the outset. No other detail fuels apocalyptic imagination as immediately as this. Jared Kushner was the owner of an office building with the address 666. The number 666, called the number of the beast in Revelation 13:18, is the quintessential code of the Antichrist, and seeing this sequence tied to Kushner could not go unnoticed. In 2007, at age 26, Jared convinced his family to pay a record-breaking $1.8 billion for the office tower at 666 Fifth Avenue, New York. At the time of Kushner's purchase in 2007, this was the highest amount ever paid for a building in the United States, prompting comments about excessive ambition. The property featured a giant illuminated 666 sign at the top, visible from a distance in Manhattan's skyline. It didn't take long for conspiracy theorists to point to Kushner as literally the owner of 666, a perfect association with the beast of Revelation. The fact that Jared had his office in that very building after the acquisition led to wild speculations. Could it be a shadowy headquarters for the Antichrist's government? It's worth noting that Revelation 13:18 says, "This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man." That number is 666. For many literalist Christians, there are no coincidences when it comes to this number. If it appears, it's a clear warning. It's true that Jared Kushner faced issues with the 666 building. The purchase came just before the 2008 financial crisis, and the property soon became a burden. Rents didn't cover the financing, leading to losses. Critics say Kushner sold his soul by taking on such a massive debt for vanity. In 2018, during the Trump administration, the Kushner family's company struck a deal to transfer control of the building to another firm, Brookfield, for 99 years, settling the debt. Interestingly, after this deal, the building's address was officially changed to 665th Avenue, removing the 666 from the facade. For critics, this was an attempt to dispel the ominous aura and jokes surrounding the building. Even before Kushner, the 666 Fifth Avenue building had already appeared in theories. In the 1990s, Lucent Technologies occupied several floors there, and because Lucent resembles Lucifer, rumors spread that the company was developing RFID microchips in that building, the mark of the beast in testing, according to conspiracists. Even the operating system used there was reportedly called Inferno. In other words, the 666 tower has always had an ominous aura in urban prophetic folklore, and Kushner's purchase of it confirmed the worst fears of these theorists. Still, the 666 building episode remains iconic in Kushner's image. In online discussions, they point out curiosities. Kushner paid $1.8 billion, and 1 + 8 = 9, which is 3 times 3 or 3 sets of 6, trying to find 666 in every detail. While many of these extrapolations are forced, the 666 coincidence undeniably stuck to Jared Kushner's reputation. Today, he no longer has ties to the building. His family sold their stake, and the address itself has changed. But for theorists, the symbolism was already set. Kushner had literally become the one who carried the 666, another checkmark on the Antichrist's list. Another characteristic attributed to the future Antichrist is intriguing. He will show no regard for the desire of women. Daniel 11:37. One interpretation suggests that the Antichrist will have no regard for women. Another interpretation posits that the desire of women refers to the longing of Hebrew women to bear the Messiah as Mary bore Jesus, implying the Antichrist will despise the true Messiah and the faith of these women. Either way, the general idea is that he will lack inclination or respect for attachment to women. This could mean celibacy, homosexuality, or being misogynistic and devoid of romantic affection. How does Jared Kushner fit into this? On one hand, he has been married to Ivanka Trump since 2009 and has 3 children. At first glance, not an anti-women figure. However, conspiracists note that Kushner is extremely reserved in public. He rarely shows affection or emotion beside his wife, projecting an almost a sexual image. His facial expression is often described as impassive or cold. Some even say his gaze seems soulless. This lack of human warmth fuels the idea of a man without desire for women or empathy, exactly as prophesied. A curious incident reinforced these theories. It was discovered that in New York's voter records, Jared Kushner was listed as female. This was due to a bureaucratic error, but conspiracists had a field day, sharing images of the document and implying that even the government can't define Kushner's gender. For them, it was another hint of an androgynous aura around Jared. It's worth noting that the desire of women could also mean what women desire a man to be: a protector, affectionate, family-oriented, and perhaps Kushner doesn't fit this profile. It's been said he would prioritize his ambitions over his own family if needed. His stoic calm contrasts, for example, with his father-in-law Donald Trump, known for extramarital scandals and macho behavior. Jared, conversely, acts almost like a cold machine, paradoxically making him seem closer to the Antichrist's image than a womanizer like Trump could ever be. It's worth noting that Jared Kushner has never been linked to scandals or romantic escapades. There's no record of ex-girlfriends or womanizing behavior. He married Ivanka young and kept his personal life shielded from the spotlight. His focus always seemed to be on business and politics. For theorists, this austere profile, devoid of displays of passion, reinforces the idea of a cold, cerebral figure and could indicate that he is driven solely by ambition and power, unconcerned with the whims of romantic romantic love. An Antichrist like this, free of deep emotional ties, would be capable of ruthless acts without hesitation, fitting the prophecy's image of a calculating tyrant. Moreover, some see a certain ambiguity in Kushner's personality. He speaks little in public, is calculating and discreet. His detractors claim he lacks apparent charisma or empathy, qualities that could be masked by an eventual aura of a rational peacemaker that would deceive the masses. Even verses like Daniel 8:23, which mention a king with a fierce appearance, or dark gaze in some translations, are recalled when observing Jared Kushner's icy expression. In the most extreme conspiracy circles, some have even speculated whether Kushner could be secretly homosexual or something similar, theories without any direct evidence, but fueled by this perception of his emotional distance. Naturally, much of this is subjective and based on impressions, but in the conspiratorial landscape, every detail counts. An Antichrist who doesn't inspire passion for women and projects, an androgynous, impenetrable persona, fits perfectly with the image Jared Kushner projects. The UN's 2030 Agenda is a set of 17 Sustainable Development Goals adopted in 2015, aiming to eradicate poverty, protect the environment, promote gender equality, and other noble objectives by 2030. However, for conspiracy theorists, the 2030 Agenda has become synonymous with an alleged global government project that would subjugate nations. They also highlight the so-called Great Reset, proposed by the Davos Forum, a redesign of the global economy with an environmental and technological focus. Phrases like "you will own nothing and be happy" by 2030, attributed to this plan, have gone viral among the suspicious, who interpret it as the elimination of private property and individual freedoms. Even measures like promoting insect-based or lab-grown meat diets for planetary sustainability are pointed to as part of the 2030 Agenda to weaken human populations. In short, the conspiratorial view of the 2030 Agenda is one of a total domination plan, and they argue that between 2020 and 2030, a series of strange events are unfolding: pandemics, economic crises, advances in digital surveillance, and the rise of globalist agendas, all part of a scheme to establish a new world order by 2030. In this context, Jared Kushner is seen as a possible key player. Although not publicly involved with the UN, he embodies the figure of a successful young globalist who moves among leaders of various countries. Conspiracists note, for example, that Kushner attended the World Economic Forum in Davos alongside leaders and billionaires, promoting initiatives like the Great Reset, a post-pandemic economic and social repositioning that, according to them, paves the way for a single government. Kushner's influence in the White House already proved his ability to shape international policies. If there were a transition to a unified global system, it's suspected that figures like him would be behind the scenes orchestrating agreements. Another point raised is Kushner's diplomatic fluidity. He negotiates with Israelis, Arabs, Russians, Chinese, demonstrating the ability to engage with unimaginable actors. This versatility would make him an ideal candidate to lead, or be the technical number two, in a technocratic global government. While more controversial figures draw attention, a populist president like Trump, or a magnate like Soros, for example, Kushner operates almost anonymously in the background. This discreet profile would protect him from opponents until it's too late. For theorists, nothing prevents Jared Kushner, or someone very close to him, from emerging around 2030 to coordinate a major coalition or global institution. It's worth emphasizing that, officially, the 2030 Agenda is transparent and there's no evidence of conspiracies in this regard. But the conspiratorial perception is powerful. They believe there's a secret timeline for the son of perdition to reveal himself by 2030, and Jared Kushner is positioned as one of the strongest candidates for this role if all conditions materialize by then. Finally, theorists point to recent world events as evidence that something monumental is being orchestrated, and that a strong leader, like the Antichrist, will soon emerge to save the day. The COVID-19 pandemic is cited as an example. In a matter of months, governments managed to lock down entire populations, impose travel restrictions, and accelerate surveillance technologies under the pretext of public health. For conspiracists, This showed how global population control is possible, a rehearsal for what the Antichrist could do. It's also noted that Jared Kushner was involved in the Trump administration's COVID-19 response team, and some accuse him of downplaying the virus's severity early on, contributing to the initial chaos, a theory that fits the idea of letting the crisis happen to later exploit it. Ongoing wars, like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, now in its third year with no resolution, a war grinding lives endlessly, or the new escalation in the Middle East, only reinforce the call for a global peacemaker. Conspiracists argue that these prolonged conflicts are not accidental. They are being deliberately extended to exhaust economies and populations until everyone accepts a global peace agreement imposed by such a leader. Once again, Jared Kushner enters the conversation. He has proven connections and influence among Russians, Ukrainians, Arabs, and Jews, who better to mediate a global ceasefire when the world is on its knees. In the realm of technology and surveillance, advances are rapid and alarming. In China, for example, total surveillance systems already exist. Cameras on streets and even at or inside homes monitor the population 24/7. Cash is giving way to state-controlled digital currencies. AI algorithms monitor social media for dissenters. All this echoes the biblical description of the Antichrist's kingdom, where no one can buy or sell unless they have the mark. Revelation 13:17. It's easy to imagine a near future where, under a global government, digital identities or vaccine passports evolve into a mandatory identification system, the feared mark of the beast. Even unusual phenomena like recent government admissions of unidentified flying objects, UFOs in the skies, are woven into the conspiratorial mosaic. Some suggest a contact with extraterrestrials event could be staged to unite humanity under one leader or to justify total control. This idea, once fringe, gained traction after the Pentagon and U.S. Congress held UFO hearings in 2023, with pilot reports and even claims of non-human biomaterials recovered. For the prophetic community, this could be one of the great deceptions of the end times mentioned in 2 Thessalonians 2:9-11. In sum, the pieces are in place. Pandemic, war, economic chaos, digital surveillance, and unexplained events, all setting the ideal stage for the arrival of a global savior. Many theorists believe that Jared Kushner, with his influence in all these areas, politics, technology, diplomacy, is the figure who could emerge to connect the dots and offer a comprehensive solution, at the cost, of course, of human freedom. Conspiracists admit it's possible that Jared Kushner is not the final Antichrist, but merely one of many lesser Antichrists paving the way for the ultimate one. The Bible itself mentions that many Antichrists have come, 1 John 2:18, throughout history, meaning individuals with the same spirit of opposition to Christ. Thus, even if Kushner isn't the chosen one of darkness, he certainly fits the profile of those preparing the ground. Some theorists even see hints that Kushner knows who the Antichrist is, or collaborates with him behind the scenes, insinuating involvement in discrete societies and covert globalist agendas. Alternative names frequently cited include French President Emmanuel Macron, whose name curiously includes Emmanuel, God with us, and even Pope Francis, due to his global appeal. However, the consensus in these circles is that Jared Kushner stands out among all due to the combination of attributes we've discussed: political connections, diplomatic skill, Jewish heritage, influential family, and low direct media exposure. He would thus be the ideal candidate to suddenly rise to a global leadership position without major resistance. Even within the Trump administration, many were surprised by how powerful Kushner became in the shadows. This led commentators to jokingly call him the Minister of Darkness of Trumpism, a reference to the Dark Lord of fiction. And as every joke has a grain of truth for believers, this would almost be an open confession of the role Jared is destined to fulfill. In the final mosaic, it's possible that Kushner won't be crowned as the beast of Revelation, but if he isn't, they say, he'll certainly be by its side, perhaps as a key advisor, a false prophet of politics, or an architect behind the curtains. Either way, his path seems intertwined with that of the coming Antichrist. For these theorists, Kushner is either the one or the one clearing the way for him, and considering everything we've seen, it's not hard to understand why. After all this analysis, the question remains, is Jared Kushner truly the Antichrist, or is it all just coincidences and speculations? The facts raised are undeniably intriguing. He meets nearly all the requirements highlighted by scholars in biblical prophecies. On the other hand, there's no concrete confirmation. And so far, 2025, Kushner has behaved only as a skilled negotiator and businessman without openly megalomaniacal statements or acts of religious oppression. It's possible he's just another shrewd power player in a complex world, or it's possible he's destined for something much greater and darker in the twists of this decade. From a faith perspective, only God knows the truth and the future. If Kushner is the Antichrist, the prophesied events should soon unfold with striking precision. If not, others will take that role. But even in that case, all signs suggest we're living in times that precede key prophetic moments. As an old saying goes, if it's not the ox, it's in the ox's shadow. Meaning, if Kushner isn't the figure himself, he's certainly very close to it. And you, what do you think of all this? Do we see in Jared Kushner the fulfillment of ancient prophecies about the Antichrist, or is he just another player in the global chess game? Share your opinion in the comments. We also want to know, what other names have you heard as candidates for the Antichrist and why? Join the discussion. After all, watching the signs of the times is something many consider important, and debating them is part of that process.